The year ahead is bright for electric vehicles. The International Energy Agency expects 14 million EVs to be sold this year. That's up 35%. But even as demand surges, EV startups struggle to scale up and compete with delivery volume from industry leaders Tesla and BYD.
So for us with Tesla, it's really a larger picture around what's going on in the competitive landscape, but also the broader macro environment for vehicle sales and EV adoption. Certainly with what we've seen year to date, it's been actually pretty positive, especially for Tesla. They've had healthy numbers in terms of sell-through. We're seeing a bunch of their competitors falter.
Never a dull moment with Tesla as it dominates the news. Analysts being called in from every which way just to figure out what's happening, what potentially could happen, and the responses range from positive to negative and everywhere in between. Let's take a look.
Tesla's price flux continues. The EV maker raising prices of its models S, X, and Y vehicles. The increase a welcome sign for investors worried about Tesla's slimming margins thanks to its aggressive price war. But the year ahead is bright for electric vehicles. The International Energy Agency expects 14 million EVs to be sold this year. That's up 35%. But even as demand surges, EV startups struggle to scale up and compete with delivery volume from industry leaders Tesla and BYD. David Callaway.
As we see the EV deliveries in Q1, we got Tesla obviously leading the pack with BYD as a close second. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if this number includes their hybrids. So if it's pure battery electric vehicles, I'm pretty sure they're a little bit closer to where Rivian is, maybe not that low. They are a distant second. Tesla's lead in this department, I'm talking about deliveries, and you might as well throw production in there, will widen. Tesla is running at full bore. BYD, Rivian, Lucid, name your automotive company, they're all experiencing setbacks. Setbacks that Tesla has already gone through. As these companies go to meet those challenges, we'll have to see if they have the testicular fortitude to stick with it, much like Tesla did, and actually see some glowing returns. BYD may be making money off their electric vehicles. Again, not sure how many of those are hybrids that are included in these Q1 numbers. I'm gonna tell you right now, their margins aren't anywhere comparable to Tesla.
Callaway Climate Insights founder and editor-in-chief joins me now for a closer look at the future of EVs. Good to have you on the show, David. So I first want to start with what we've... Good to see you. I first want to start with some of the earnings that we've seen from Rivian, Lucid, and Fisker. What is that telling us about really in these companies in particular, and really where they are in terms of competition with a Tesla or a BYD?
Yeah, this was earnings week for the EV companies, Rochelle, and we really began to see what's been starting to happen for some months now, which is the beginnings of a maturing of the electric vehicle industry. We've had 4 years of talking about electric cars, and Tesla's dominated the market in that time frame. All the other models were startups, and they had good stories, and they raised money, and they told good stories to investors. Some of them went public, some of them went SPAC, and there was a lot of fanfare. And now they're kind of reaching the point where the entire auto industry has been sold on EVs. The big guys like Ford, GM, even Toyota are ramping up massively. And so the startup companies are having a hard time. First of all, it's hard to find the money to build and scale production like you need to. Rivian, for instance, is hoping, it had one of the better earnings this week. Stock is still down. It's hoping to make 50,000 cars a year going forward. Well, Toyota made 118,000 electric cars last quarter, and Tesla made 437,000 electric cars this quarter. So, it's a big difference, and Rivian is struggling to make that. Lucid is, they're making about 2,000 cars a month. Fisker is making, slightly more of its trucks, but not that much. Another company, Lordstown Motors, is barely alive and running out of cash, it seems. So, what we're starting to see is as the industry matures, like any industry, you go from kind of startup talk and all the hype and excitement about what could be to the bigger companies coming in and saying, right, we're going to do this and we're going to scale it. So, I predict that some of these companies will fail. Others will be taken over by bigger companies. For instance, Lucid is 60% owned by the Saudis. They could step in at any time. Amazon and Ford have big Rivian stakes. So anything could happen there going forward. But as the EV industry develops, it's really going to be a race for the big boys to catch Tesla. And that's going to be interesting because we're going to start to see big boys from China coming in as well.
Yes, yes, the race to catch Tesla. Imagine if you got 10 of the fastest people on Earth and you put them on the track to do a 100-meter dash. This will be a endurance trial as we talk about EVs, but bear with me. Put them on the starting line, the gun goes off, pow, and then you got them all racing. They're going. Takes about 10 seconds or less for them to all cross the finish line. That's awesome. Great race. It's exciting. Problem with this, and they're talking about the other big boys. Tesla, if we use a similar analogy and we put all of the automakers on the line at the same time, if they started at the same time, same goals, right? All these automakers have ambitious goals now. Tesla had ambitious goals in 2006. This is not a fair race because Tesla has already been on the starting line. They've already heard the gunshot and they're running laps right now. So Tesla's on lap 3 and these guys are just getting to the starting line. They're like, we're still doing that 100-yard dash? Tesla's like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll see you around the bend. Tesla's already moving. So if you're talking about a fair fight, it's not. Tesla has already dominated and will continue to dominate. There is no reason to pull over. They are running with reckless abandon to meet their stated goals of 20 million vehicles per year.
And keeping that in mind, then, this shakeout that we're seeing in the EV space, as you mentioned, some won't make it, some perhaps could be acquired then. And when you look at the number of EVs that are being sold, but then you look at the stock prices, especially for some of these companies that also have input costs that go into some of these EVs, seeing something of a divergence here. Why do you think that is?
Well, a car is an expensive thing to make. And an electric car is turning out to be even more expensive. It seems simple as just a battery, right? But the batteries are very expensive. You have to source minerals to get to the batteries. The batteries are heavier, which means that once we have fleets of electric cars on the road, and I think you said 14 million cars, this year, the IEA is also predicting, America will have 25% electric cars by the end of the decade. China will be 80% electric, Europe 60% electric. Once we have these massive fleets, they're going to be heavier. We're going to need new tires on all the cars, new roads, new bridges. But it's an expensive endeavor, and for a startup company, even one that's raised several $100 million, like Rivian or Lucid, that goes fast when you're trying to scale production and make 10,000 cars a month. So I think that's really what's behind the kind of shakeout that we're seeing. And in the meantime, Toyota, Ford, GM are ramping up big time. I mean, Ford said it expects to lose $3 billion on its EVs before it can get the profitability in a few years. It has $3 billion. The others don't.
I don't care how much money you got. Production is hard. Whether or not you plan to spend 40 billion, plan to spend 400 billion. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. Because if you're doing it wrong, if you're doing it inefficiently, you're going to be wasting not only money, but materials. To get more materials, what do you need? You need more money. So not only are you burning money, but you're doing things so inefficiently that you're going to need more materials. So you're burning cash on both ends just to meet production demands. Tesla is such a well-oiled machine so that every time they buy something, none of that goes to waste. No resource wasted. They're going to make sure that they get every ounce of value out of everything that they purchase. When you read the economic reports, you listen to the earnings calls, and you see how much they're saving, it is amazing. It's astounding. It's so much so that people are like, there's no way that they're that efficient. But unbeknownst to them, Tesla holds itself to a higher standard. They understand what's at stake.
And you have a lot of sort of homemade brands in China, Europe leading the way as well. But then you look at BYD. We know that Warren Buffett was hot on it for a second. We know he likes a strong economic moat. He likes a company that has a competitive edge. What's your take on what he's doing now with sort of selling and sort of moving away from BYD?
Yeah, it's really fascinating, Rochelle. I mean, we were talking about the startups, right? But BYD is the biggest EV company in the world. Bigger than Tesla.
It is not the largest producer of EVs in China, unless you're counting battery electric vehicles plus hybrid vehicles. This narrative that BYD is the largest producer of EVs in China, kind of suspect. Tesla is the best electric vehicle maker, not only in China, but Europe and North America. This is fact.
And its stock has been up sixfold over the last 10 years or so. Warren Buffett got in very early. He got in right after the last financial crisis a dozen years ago. And he's been riding a huge profit on it. So the fact that he's starting to sell, he sold about half his stake in the last 6 months. This came out of his Omaha meetings last weekend, which you guys attended. The fact that he's starting to sell says something. It may say more about his concerns about China going forward, but it also may say something about the maturation of the EV industry, right? And BYD is the largest by far in China. It wants to expand into the U.S. Will it be allowed to by the government? We don't know. Is it going to expand into Europe? It is, but it's good, slow going there. So maybe Buffett's realized he's gotten the sweet part of the EV story, and it's time to move on to something else, AI or something like that.
I wonder what would happen a dozen years ago had Warren Buffett decided to put his money in Tesla instead of BYD. I have a feeling we'd be looking at Warren Buffett as more of a genius than he already is. Now to Colin Rush from Oppenheimer. Let's see what he has to say.
The road ahead for Tesla. What is it? Colin Rush is here to tell us. He's managing director and senior analyst with Oppenheimer. Colin, you surprised the stock isn't holding its gains today?
Not really. I mean, the truth of the matter is that Tesla continues to have an important technology lead in the EV space. A lot of their competitors are really struggling on production and cost reduction. And so as we look at Elon's attention span and the depth of management at Tesla, this isn't a huge change to see him resigning from the CEO position at Twitter. The team at Tesla is a deep, very talented team, and it's very focused. Certainly he's going to have his hands full on the technology side at Twitter for sure. But right. I think the real issue for Tesla now is around demand. And I think the thing that may happen here with the Twitter change is really a repair of the Tesla brand with a certain segment of society.
I definitely don't believe it's fair to say Tesla is having an issue with demand. I believe the auto industry as a whole is having issues with demand, not to any fault of their own, but due to the economic pressure worldwide. Nobody's buying vehicles at this stage. There is a tightening of the belts, so to speak.
So that is a really fascinating point, and people have talked about how much Tesla has fallen as a result of everything Musk has done on Twitter and his comments there. Do you think he is reacting to that by bringing in someone who's extremely professional, moving it in more of an ad-friendly way, which has to negate some of the more problematic speech that was viewed as hurting his reputation? So do you think that's partly what this is about? And again, if that's all what's going on here, you'd think Tesla could at least stay positive for a session.
Forgive me, Colin. I'll answer this leading, long-winded question. The answer, in short, ma'am, no. Colin, please, give her the politically correct answer.
I think it's probably part of what's going on here. I mean, I think the big issue for Twitter is around revenue. We're certainly not covering that company as a private company, but the cash flow is the real concern for Tesla investors for sure, as they look at Elon, selling more of his stake potentially, which does not appear to be a need at this point. So for us with Tesla, it's really a larger picture around what's going on in the competitive landscape, but also the broader macro environment for vehicle sales and EV adoption. Certainly with what we've seen year to date, it's been actually pretty positive, especially for Tesla. They've had healthy numbers in terms of sell-through. We're seeing a bunch of their competitors falter as they go through initial ramps for some of the startups, and even some of the established OEMs struggling with software and other issues. And so the setup for Tesla is good, and the question is around what the margin profile looks like, and that's very much in flux. They have enough granular data to be able to change prices on a regular basis by geography, and we're watching that play out in the media.
Okay, so Colin, that's perfect, because that's the question I want to ask. I want you, in the couple of minutes that we have left here, can you take us through, as an analyst, how influential Tesla is with regard to setting prices in the auto market, not just for EVs, but possibly the auto industry writ large?
Oh, sorry, Colin. I'm going to go ahead and take this one, too. Tesla's going to dictate price because they can. They're the only ones producing electric vehicles affordably in these price ranges, and only ones producing electric vehicles at less of a cost than what they're selling them. As someone is trying to sell not only a comparable EV, but an internal combustion engine, let's say the likes of a Model 3 or a Model Y, of course you could charge more. I mean, you're probably going to have to, considering Tesla makes their products infinitely cheaper than the competition makes theirs, and Tesla's not gouging their customers. They're just aiming for mid 20% margins. That doesn't bode well as they continue to drive the cost down to produce their product. When the other competitors trying to compete with Tesla, they're going to be stress tested. Well, maybe people will buy our more expensive, less functional, less performative vehicle. It looks different. Does that move the needle for you? I mean, sure. Could you give us an extra 15 grand? And that's still not going to help us make money on this vehicle, but it's enough, right? Wrong. People are not going to buy a $70,000 SUV if Tesla's selling their Model Y for $55,000. It's just not going to happen. But the competitor can't sell their SUV for $55,000. Oh no, that's a fast way to go bankrupt, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not making any money on it now, there's no way you can lower the price. You spend that money on ad revenue when you probably should be spending it on driving your costs down to produce the vehicles. But that's too hard. I'd rather trick my customer into believing that this EV is just as good, if not better than a Model Y. Your EV's nice, but it wasn't $15,000 more nice compared to the Tesla model. Forgive me, Colin, continue.
Yeah, I think it's critical. From a functionality perspective, we're really watching this next rollout of the self-driving technology to look at how they position that, how the technology works, and what the pricing model ultimately looks like. The message that they put out in the last quarter was that they were out looking for users, right? They were out getting customers to buy the vehicles that they could then upgrade through services and other revenue streams. I think what we're watching to see is how that plays out here. We certainly see them with a cost advantage in a number of geographies where they're actually generating cash. They're at a sustainable growth pace. And what this looks like from a margin perspective, both at the vehicle level, but then at the add-on level is critical to what the valuation is on the stock. And I think it's TBD, to be honest. And that's what we're watching for here over the next several months.
And that's where I differ. I don't think it's TBD. I've experienced this stuff. Well, what have we learned today? The EV race is heating up. I guess Tesla didn't get the memo. Consider they've already passed the warm-up stage and they're in full cook mode. They started a little bit early while everyone else is starting to heat up. Warren Buffett has decided to let go of some of his holdings in BYD. Smart man. Smarter would be to have invested in Tesla at that time when he invested in BYD, but not everybody's perfect. These projections from a lot of these analysts and experts, they're probably going to be severely underestimated. I have a sneaking suspicion that those numbers for EV adoption in Europe, Asia, and North America will be grossly understated. When you're talking about the circulation of what percentage of EVs will be on roads in Asia, I want to say they said 80%. By the end of the decade, maybe there might be some internal combustion engines circling around. When you're talking about new vehicle sales, that'll be non-existent. In America, I imagine it won't be 25%. I think it will be closer to 40%. There will still be internal combustion engines on the road in 2030. There just won't be any new ones being sold. Matter of fact, they will be cannibalized for parts for the internal combustion engines that are going to still be on roads. And I guarantee you, when you're talking about new vehicle registrations and sales, we're probably going to be looking at an adoption rate of about 80%. I'm not saying they'll be at the same current level, but nobody's going to be buying an internal combustion engine brand new. A lot of good nuggets today, but that's where I'm going to leave you. Be easy. Peace.